All right. I'm Daniel Chou, and hello and welcome to the August 2023 edition of the NRail newsletter ZoomTRAK meeting. Today we have Soldering with Lee Williams, Klawndyke Products by Shawn Dyke, and the Mother Road in T-TRAK by Bruce Arbo. We hope you enjoy all these segments today. But first, we have the 2023 NRail National Train Show and the 50th anniversary of NRail in Grapevine, Texas, with an update by Bruce and general information by John Wallace. Bruce, if you want to take the helm first, I'll hand the mic off to you.
Thank you, Daniel. I'll just be real quick. The 25th, Friday the 25th, we've got our banquet at in Grapevine, and if you haven't signed up yet, now is the time to do so. We're going to have JTC is doing a special container. We have a number of really fine guests who are going to be there. And of course, that's going to be part of the National Train Show with setup on Thursday and open to the public Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And this is the first time we are actually going to connect T-TRAK to NTRAK to FreeMO-N, so you can run all three standards. If you need any more information, you can just go ahead and at this point just send email directly to me, bruce@nrail.org or info@nrail.org. And John?
Well, you just said most of what I was going to say. At the layout, we'll be running Cotton Brute. We'll have a special train running at the start on Friday at 10. After that, anybody at the layout can run their cars behind Cotton Brute and can run Cotton Brute. So come by and have some fun with us. Daniel?
Thank you, Bruce and John. I'm glad we were able to discuss this today. First, we have Soldering with Lee Williams. Lee, whenever you're ready, feel free to take the helm.
Okay, a while back, my son was watching me soldering and asked, "Is that a hot metal glue?" I'd never thought of it that way, but I guess that's one way to look at it. In this presentation, I'll cover some of the basics of electrical soldering. Well, what is solder? First, what is solder? Solder is an alloy, most commonly 60% tin and 40% lead, which has a melting point of 370 degrees Fahrenheit. For electrical soldering, always use rosin core solder. 370 degrees Fahrenheit is lower than the melting point of most other metals. This allows you to melt the solder to make a solid electrically conducting joint between electrical components without melting the components. This brings up two safety issues for soldering. First, 370 degrees Fahrenheit is hot enough to cause 3rd-degree burns. You have to be careful not to let any part of your body come in contact with a hot soldering iron, melted solder, or hot components that haven't had a chance to cool down. Wear eye protection, especially if you are soldering above your head, such as under a module. Second is that lead has been discovered to be a hazardous material. Be sure to wash your hands after touching solder before you handle any food in order to prevent lead poisoning. So what tools will you need for soldering? First, you'll need a soldering iron or soldering station. A soldering station is basically a soldering iron with temperature control. I really like my Radio Shack 25-watt Pro-Line soldering iron. It has an 8-foot long 3-wire electrical cord with ground. It also has interchangeable tips. I bought 2 extra tips. This gives me 3 options for soldering. The middle tip is for general purpose soldering. The tip on the top is for delicate soldering, like soldering a small auxiliary light wire onto a DCC decoder board. The chisel tip at the bottom is for heavier duty soldering, where you need more heat transfer. Soldering stations come with their own stand to hold the iron. Soldering irons usually just have a little clip-like object to set a hot iron on. I highly recommend that you get a good stand for your soldering iron. It's an easy place to put a hot soldering iron. Also, they come with a clean device for the soldering tip. Normally, this is a wet sponge. The problem is that a wet sponge cools the tip when you clean it. Another alternative is a cleaner made of brass coils. You just stab the tip into the cleaner or wipe the tip off on it. I also recommend that you have a desolder tool. also known as a solder sucker. One is designed for one-handed operation. You can hold it and push the plunger down with one hand to cock it, and then press the button with the same hand to release the plunger and suck up molten solder. You can also use a solder wick to remove molten solder. Next, I need to mention soldering flux. Flux helps the solder to flow better and reduces oxidation, but it's not a substitute for cleaning the surfaces. Rosin core solder has some flux in it. If the items you are soldering are clean and not oxidized, the rosin in the solder is sufficient. However, if a surface is oxidized, like an older rail or a copper wire that's been exposed to the air for a while, or if you need the solder to flow into a tight space, you'll need some additional flux. Flux can be either liquid or paste. I normally use paste as shown here. You can apply flux in tight places with a toothpick. Sometimes you don't have enough hands to hold the soldering iron, hold the solder, and hold the items being soldered. This is where a third hand type of clip can be useful. So how do you solder? Well, the basic method works best when you can connect the two items to be soldered together before you solder them. Heat the items you are soldering with the iron, then touch the solder to the hot wire while continuing to heat them with the iron. Let the required amount of solder flow as shown below, and then remove the solder and the soldering iron. The solder will freeze quickly as the items cool down. After you finish soldering, clean off the excess flux with isopropyl alcohol. A good solder joint is smooth and shiny. If you are soldering components or wire to a circuit board, the solder should flow completely around the lead or wire as shown here. Watch out for cold solder joints. This is a solder joint that either has insufficient solder, lack of flux, or wasn't heated enough to let the solder flow properly. Below is an example of a good solder joint on the top and a cold solder joint on the bottom. The cold solder joint will initially work, but over time will work itself loose and lose electrical connection. Sometimes you need to limit how much solder you put on an item you are soldering, such as adding solder to make a contact pad on the coder thicker to make good contact with the frame. Apply a blob of solder on the hot iron tip. If you get too much solder on the tip, clean off the tip and try again. When you have the right amount of solder on the tip, touch it to the item that you are soldering. Here are my favorite techniques for soldering. After you connect one end of a wire to your module, you discover that it isn't long enough and you need to splice another length of wire on it. I'm a big advocate of Western Union splices for this case. In the picture below, I'm splicing two 22 AWG wires, stripped the same length of insulation, in this case about an inch, off of each wire. Twist them together as shown below. Start the twisting them with your fingers and then tighten them with two needle nose pliers. Apply solder to the splice as previously shown. And finally, insulate the splice with shrink tubing. My favorite technique for soldering feed wires to the track is to solder the wires to the bottom of the rails so that you can't see the feed wires. This works when laying the track on a module. After bending and cutting the flex track to fit where the cut is needed, cut out the plastic between the ties under the rails as shown here. Then place the track on the road bed and mark where the gaps are cut. Drill holes for the feed wires directly under the rails at the gaps. Apply some flux to the bottom of the rail, then apply a blob of solder to the bottom of the rails as shown here. Next, strip off some insulation off the feed wires, flatten the wires with smooth jawed needle nose pliers, and bend a small 90-degree angle tab with the needle nose pliers as shown here. Then tin the ends of the wire with solder. Then place the feed wire on the solder blob on the bottom of the rail as shown here. Heat the wire with soldering iron until the solder blob melts and the feed wire sinks into the blob. Here's the track with both feed wires attached. Make sure you have good solder joints. Feed the wires into the holes drilled in the roadbed and fasten or adhere the track to the roadbed. Once the track is ballasted, you cannot see the feed wires. Well, what if you need to attach feed wires to track that has already been laid? Well, in this case, drill a 5/64 or 3/32 hole between the ties just outside the rail as shown here. Clean the rail above the hole, apply some flux and a blob of solder as shown here. Prepare the feed wire the same way as shown for soldering on the bottom of the rail. Insert the feed wire into the hole with the bent tab facing the rail and touching the solder blob. Heat the tab to melt the solder blob and sink the tab into the feed wire, the tab on the feed wire into the solder blob as shown here. Paint the solder joint the rail color and fill the hole with some ballast. The feed wire will barely be noticed. Hopefully this presentation will help you have a reliable, long-lasting solder joints on your module. And I think that about concludes it. If there are any questions, we can post them as comments or answer them, I guess, at the end of the presentation, at the end of the meeting, right?
That's right. I really enjoyed your presentation, Mr. Williams. And again, as he said, let's leave any longer comments towards the end of the end of the show, or maybe I'll have any short ones. Feel free to ask them real quick. I'll leave it up for a few seconds.
I have a quick question. Why do you have to clean the flux off after you solder?
Well, if you leave it on too long, it can cause some corrosion. That's what I understand.
It's also sticky, and things will stick to it that you don't want on there.
There are various different types of flux. Some of them are acidic and will actually cause problems over time. Some of them are sticky.
And what is a good brand of soldering station? Radio Shack is not available, I don't think, anymore.
Actually, as I understand, they are available online. There are some hobby stores that sell Radio Shack stuff now. They don't have their own stores anymore.
Yeah, right.
But I believe you can order stuff from online from Radio Shack still.
Wow, I'll check that. Thank you.
I got a question there. If you happen to, where you're soldering a lead to the side of the rail and you happen to get a little solder on the top of the rail, how do you go about cleaning that off?
Well, you can sometimes you can just get it off with like a knife if it's not adhered to solidly to the rail. Otherwise, you may have to try to use like a solder sucker or something like that and heat it up and try to get as much of it off as you can, and then just clean the rail with like a bright boy or something.
Solder wick also works well.
Yeah.
Keep a bright boy handy, and that'll take it right off if you catch it quick enough.
A lot of times you just get a drop of solder on the rail and it doesn't really adhere to the rail that well, and you can kind of almost break it off.
I guess you would not recommend a file.
Well, you can, but that's going to scratch up the top of your rails. But yeah, sometimes you have to do that. Actually, I tend to notice it's more a problem if you're trying to solder a rail joiner and you get some solder on top of the rail. I've noticed it's a bigger problem with that.
Heat range of your soldering guns?
Well, the soldering iron has a wattage. If you get a soldering station, obviously something hotter than the melting point of the solder, you would set it at. If it's just an iron, it's just a wattage, and it heats up, and it's just depending on the wattage of the soldering iron depends upon how big of a thing you can solder.
Well, 22 gauge, what would you suggest?
Oh, a somewhere around the 25 to 35 watt soldering iron is plenty if you just solder in 22 gauge wire.
Another good brand of soldering iron is Hakko, Hakko. You can find that brand. That's pretty good. Also, Lee, I think in your earlier slide, the second, third one, where you show that brass thing, you scrub your pots with.
Yes.
So be very careful because there's a lot of them out there, especially on Amazon, where you look at it and it's brass color. You think it's brass, but it's not. It's steel. And they plate it with some kind of gold color. And steel doesn't really work too well because it will scratch and ruin the ironclad tip of your soldering iron. So when you get it from Amazon, drill down and see if anyone comments about, this little brass sponge is really steel. It's a Chinese knockoff. And, you see the price for a couple of bucks, you question that because steel will start scratching your tip and then soon your solder.
Steel will scratch. Actually, it's the I believe this chromium plating on the soldering iron tip that would come off and mess up the tip, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something like that. And then there goes your tip, and you're wondering why the solder doesn't stick to your tip.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just about wrapping up the remaining time we have for soldering again. Any more comments? Let's leave them for the end of the show today. And Lee, thank you for your lesson on soldering. That was actually really insightful for me. I'm trying to work on that more as I progress towards a new layout. Coming up next, we have Klawndyke products. And Klawndyke's products is done by Shawn Dyke. And I'll hand it off to Bruce, who will be presenting the presentation that we have for us today.
Hi, Shawn. Welcome to ZoomTRAK. And I know you're a regular viewer, but you're also a vendor, and we're pleased to have you in our vendor spotlight today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Hi, Bruce. Thank you. Well, I'm Shawn Dyke. I am the owner of Klawndyke.com. I've been doing laser engraving and cutting for about the last 11 years. When I first got into laser cutting, I started with HO as far as I designed and cut an HO scale station. And I was having fun with it, but reality hit and I had to pay back the machine, so I had to take off with a different avenue. And after all this time, I'm finally getting back into my trains to find out after having kids, you lose space. So I've got to downsize, and I ended up stumbling across a local club here in Des Moines, Iowa. It's Des Moines T-TRAK. And I was really impressed on the T-TRAK module. It was really the first time that I had the opportunity of seeing it. And pretty much everything started from there. I was pointed into the right directions into the wiki. And there I was able to get all my standard measurements and started doing the modules for myself. And next thing I notice, I'm here live, and I have a little business, and I'm loving this. I'm 5 months into it, and slowly growing, and our modules are growing, and I'm growing, and this is really, really kind of exciting to me.
Show us one of the products that you have, your T-TRAK modules, please.
Yeah. We'll start with, I have a single. And this is a kit that's been put together. It's 1/4 inch thick. I use 1/4 inch thick ply. I've done I've tried a lot of different plies, and I found one that's extremely stable. Personally, I like birch ply, but the affordability of birch has almost quadrupled in price, and I'm trying to keep the prices really affordable for everyone in the T-TRAK community, including myself. I'll be honest about that. So I've been able to use, it's a 1/4 inch sandy ply, and then on the laser, I can cut it out to the point where it has locking tabs, so it keeps it nice and tight. And then once the glue dries, it's a nice rigid module. And then here, I'll show you one of my kits. This is one of the kits that I call it's the single bridge. As you can see, everything is cut and packaged. I do include the inserts, the set screws and feet. The feet are nice because it gives you a little extra space on the table. And give me 1 second. Here is one of the bridge modules together. Now, as far as the scenery, I'm still learning scenery. I should have brought one up with me that I've done, but this should give you an idea. The spacing within here, it allows you to add 2-inch rigid foam. So you could have a flat module and you cut into it, or do your river scenes or highways. And I make sure I've worked on the instructions to make it where it is. I hope it's easy for everyone to understand. So when you do put the module together, it will end up being nice and tight, and one you'll be proud of.
Do you sell assembled as well as kits?
Not at the moment for logistics. It's easier to send the kit. The kits are actually a lot of fun. It's part of the module building. You're building the base and the foundation, and then you're going up from there. And they're not really too hard. It's pretty much all you need is wood glue and blue tape. You don't need anything fancy for the kits.
Going back to one of the modules that you had, like one of the singles, can you show us that again? There are a couple of questions I have about them. I notice if you hold it up, you have holes in it for the track.
Oh,
screw holes.
Yes, I do. I don't know how well you can see it, but I have for the power drops here. And then you can see for the track, now all the Kato track on the bottom will have places for the screws to come up from underneath.
Right.
And these will match up. And then I also made sure there's enough play just in case you need to move it a little bit.
If people are looking for a source for the screws, where do you have a source or something?
I do. I do. I believe. Oh Lordy, I will have them on my site.
Okay.
And now what they are is it's an OT 3/4 inch truss head screw is what I use, and then for washers I 3D print the washers because it gives it just enough thickness to where the screw doesn't go through the Kato track.
Huh, interesting.
And I'll actually put the STL files for the screws on the website so you can download them for free. Or not the screws, but the washers.
Right. Here is your website. Just bring it up so people can see it. And if people are looking for the address, so this is the address. Now, I understand you'll also be sending some information to the NRail newsletter so that people can check there as well for further information.
Yes, I will.
Okay. One other thing on the modules, I noticed there's a hole in the back. Is that for track power?
Yes. And what I'm doing is I'm also sending the little piece with it. So if you're not going to use it and you just want to plug it, you can. But yeah, you can connect your main.
Now those two holes are those for back on either side? Are those for backdrops?
Yes.
Okay. So
And I'm trying
basically, this looks like it's very complete. You don't have to do any drilling yourself. Everything is there, which you can use or not use, depending upon what you want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. One of my goals is to make it easy and affordable. Yeah, I understand that for some it's not easy to get into the hobby because of finances, but hopefully this makes it to where everybody can enjoy the hobby.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
More than welcome.
We always welcome a vendor who can provide us with T-TRAK kits, because that's a very common question, and so we appreciate your taking the time today to talk to us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And the one thing I do like getting input. I do like the input. That's the one thing that I've noticed, especially with Des Moines Track, the club that I'm with. They've helped me out a lot. They've given me some really good ideas, and I've found a few people out in the world that have given me some good information, and that is really appreciative.
So if somebody has a custom job, you will consider it.
Yes, I will.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much.
And thank you.
I would pay dearly to have you provide the track screws and those washers with the kit, so it's all inclusive and I don't have to hunt stuff down that I don't know anything about.
The intent, or the that's my goal, is to bring everything online and easily accessible.
Hi, I got a question. I got your kits. I love them. Will you
Thank you.
if you need a custom design, use NRail or XCAT, or how would you to try to help with the drill patterns?
I guess my first goal was to make it simple for anybody that's getting into T-TRAK. And then as you progress, it's your module. You set it up or put any track to do anything you wish with.
Yeah, I meant NRail, not NRail. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the ZoomTRAK. As far as like doing the double versus the singles, as time goes on, like I said, I'm trying to get all the input that I can and make it feasible for everybody.
A significant thing, I think, is the feet. Could you show us the
yes.
feet? Because I think it's extraordinary, significant, and easy for us to use when we're setting up the modules.
Okay, yeah, give me one second.
Just as a side note, we have about 2 more minutes for comments till we have to progress further in the meeting.
Okay. On the feet, I use the 2-inch set screw. And I don't know how well you guys can see it. The feet are actually 3D printed. So if you do have a 3D printer and you're already using set screws, be it metal or plastic, you can download the file and 3D print the feet yourself. The file is for free. I don't know how well you can see it. But it gives you more of a footprint on the table, especially if you're close to an edge.
And you adjust it from the top.
Correct. It uses the I forgot the size. It uses the Allen screw you can put right through one of the holes in the top that's directly above it, and you can adjust it up and down. This way, you don't have to worry about trying to reach underneath and adjust your legs or your feet. I don't know.
All right, so that looks like all the time we have for the comments, with the short comments so far. Shawn, I really love the products you've been making, and I do look forward to buying some because I've been looking forward to getting into T-TRAK with our local club. So thank you. I'm glad we could have had you today.
And thank you for having me on.
Oh, of course. Our last subject for today is the Mother Road in T-TRAK by Bruce Arbo. I'll hand it off to Bruce now. Bruce?
Okay, yeah. For those that don't know me, my name is Bruce Arbo. I'm here in coastal Alabama. I'm part of my own group, Coastal Alabama T-TRAK, but I've been an N-scaler since, gosh, as an adult since the late 1980s into the early 1990s when I lived in Austin. I was affiliated with the Austin Track N-TRAK group with the likes of Joe Cox, George Howell, Kim Sign, some of those pioneering types in N-scale. I got into T-TRAK, gosh, 2013, when my wife and I took a trip to back to Central Texas, where I had created a 6-foot N-TRAK module to basically appear in the NMRA regional held in Round Rock, Texas. And although we loved it and it was fun, we noticed all the public, once it was open to the public, were heading over to an opposite side of the thing where T-TRAK was being displayed. And it had an impact on us. Kids, adults, everybody was really intrigued with T-TRAK. So we caught the bug, and I decided I was going to try to build a few T-TRAK modules when we got back home. I was very fortunate enough to contact Terry Nathan, who was part of the Austin Track group involved in T-TRAK. And of course, he was one of the pioneers, not early pioneer, but became a pioneer in T-TRAK modules, like Shawn Dyke is right now with the original T-kits. So I was fortunate in that respect. And I decided my first T-TRAK modules were going to be basic because I wanted to test the concept of T-TRAK for myself, just to see if I could get it to work correctly according to the standards that were published then. So I went ahead and did some basic flat modules and kind of had to come up with ideas of what I wanted on there, since they were going to be kind of featureless and no below or above the track scenery to speak of. And I decided I was going to put a highway on the first one that I did. And basically wasn't really inspired by Route 66 or anything. I was really more inspired by the Santa Fe Speedway across Kansas and eastern Colorado, where it followed the main highway through Dodge City and cities like that, where the speeds on the Santa Fe would get up to 100 miles an hour. But it gradually morphed into, well, I got to make it more familiar to everybody else. So I came up with kind of the Mother Road concept. I say Mother Road. I specifically don't say Route 66 because I don't want to model anything super accurate. I want it to appear as if it's inspired by Route 66. So I've got a number of slides that I want to start doing this. So I'm going to go ahead to my share screen here and kind of get it started here. Okay, so good. We got it going now. This is basically my title screen that I use for social media. And it shows one of my Mother Road modules. In this case, a couple of singles put together. And basically, that first part of the presentation is just some snapshots of the Mother Road modules that I've developed. All told, I don't own all of them anymore. I've sold a few to members in the Southeast region here, either in Pensacola or in Middle Georgia, because I'm just don't have room to keep all the ones I've been keeping, and I still want to see them in regional shows that we have. But I kind of started off in the Midwest, even though this doesn't show the Midwest. Here we go. Yeah. This also shows kind of we've moved west into the desert. This is a concrete road that Bruce Alcock mentioned was heavily patched. Just kind of wanted to see that. I'll get into how I do the roads, but right now it's just a snapshot of some of my Mother Road modules. It's that same module. It's basically an inside corner. By the way, all my desert scenery is foam, carved foam, and Arizona rock and mineral products for ground cover. But the concept was basically to have a two-lane highway follow along the double track, just to give some more visual interest. And I started off in the Midwest with kind of agricultural, rural, like something you'd see in Missouri or, again, Kansas. And then my desire to, if I continue to do these, and so far I have, all but one of the modules I've made out of 30 plus modules has been in the Mother Road theme, is to continue move west all the way, I guess, to the Pacific. Here's my most recent single, Another Desert Southwest. And I've tried to use as many of the existing structure products as possible. This particular one is a Showcase Miniatures. It's in their Route 66 series, and it's basically a mechanic shop. Again,
Yes,
just
sir.
sideshows of various. That's a motel one, obviously inspired by Seligman. I wanted kind of a standard Route 66 motel, kind of a close up of it. And then this is just a series of singles put together, taken from an angle to show how the road is kind of continuous. I was careful to match them up as I build them. Another double with a backdrop, a printed backdrop on there. Here's what the double looks like here. Yeah, okay, good, time-wise. But as you can see, these are all the southwest portion of the Mother Roads modules that I got going. And I think Glenn was asking about the striping. I'll get into that more, but this shows some of that chart tape striping that I used. And some more snapshots with various. Here's one of my original kind of rural Midwest modules. This is a single using one of the Blair Line structures, the Dairy King rather than the Dairy Queen. This is one of the original and oldest. Here's another one, a double with Blair Line General Store on it. For this picture, I literally just posed the module on a table about 3 minutes from here where I live in one of the fields. And it kind of matched up and continued, so I was able to get some good photography done with the T-TRAK modules. Here is one of the corners. I have two standard corners put together, and again, the road theme follows. And here's one of the corners set up with that original double with the general store. And over there at the end, you might see one of those singles that has the drop down with the bridge. Now that I actually, like Shawn was showing on his kit, but I actually just turned the regular T-Kits module by cutting it out myself and forming a creek with woodland scenics water. Here's another one of the corners with a plowed, furrowed field there. And again, you can see the highway just kind of continues along. Here's one of the junction modules. I actually sold these to Stuart Denniston, also a maker of modules who lives half an hour from me here in the Pensacola area. But I wanted to carry the theme along the junction, so they kind of cross over at grade. And here's the two junctions put back to back when the modules are set up in the old classic oval racetrack setup. And this is my very first T-TRAK module. It's a double, and it featured, of course, the road. And probably my fourth T-TRAK module, single with the Blair Line drive-in in it. And there's again, at one of our shows way back when, 5 or 6 years ago, that's the Dairy King module. Again, I like to use singles and double. Now, the biggest questions I get when I'm asked about this is how do I make my roads? And it's seems to be a constant query on all the social media. And it's very simple. And I happen to use the cheapest material I could find as an experiment, and it just kind of happened to work out. This is chipboard. I don't know if you can see it. All chipboard is a kind of a compressed cardboard, basically used in crafting. My wife has done scrapbooking and crafting, and they use a lot of chipboard products. Sold at Hobby Lobby in poster-sized sheets, various thicknesses. The thickness I picked out was had my digital calipers on it just a little while ago. It's 3/32 inch thick. And while I bought a sheet there in Hobby Lobby, I just happened to be walking by the framing department right next to it. And I asked them if, hey, if you guys aren't busy, could you cut this into 2-inch widths? you know, and I guess they were bored and they did it for me free. And I picked 2 inches, not because of any parameter of highways, but because I took 2 in-scale vehicles side by side, kind of posed them together, and 2 inches looked kind of normal to me. Look, you know, enough in both lanes to look kind of natural. So I still probably have 4 or 5 lengths of poster length 2-inch strips for our upcoming modules. Basically, it's easy to glue. Elmer's glue. We'll glue it to the plywood top of the module. Here's a couple of strips arranged on that Dairy King module when I first started. What I do basically is put it on there and then use spackle, lightweight spackle, to form a shoulder. I use spackle both in the tube or the little jar, and apply it with a kind of like a plastic putty knife. And then once the spackle's dry, you can sand it to kind of a feather edge and form the slope. The compressed chipboard takes the sanding fine. It doesn't beat itself up or tear itself apart. It's pretty thick, almost like styrene plastic. So as you can see, I've painted the road in that one, used a kind of a Sharpie pen to put tar repair cracks on it. Here I've done some shoulder with some ultra fine scale ballast, kind of a limestone white ballast for my rural. I also kind of use a blend of ballast for parking lots and such. Back then, I was striping with a Woodland Scenic highway striping pen, which was a extra fine felt point with an enamel in it, which really was a pain in the rear. They have white and yellow ones. You needed a straight edge to make sure it was perfectly aligned, but they would bleed. And then, of course, you had to paint over the mistakes, and it was kind of a back and forth till you got it the way you liked it. I usually weather the grease strip with this little product for scale models, aircraft and armor by Tamiya. They're not pastels, they're pigments, oil-based pigments. And you apply them with the little tool that they have, which basically is a makeup brush sponge on one end and a little brush on the other end. And you basically just dip it into there, rub it, and then like that. And you can just kind of apply it along the road there. This is, again, my first module, the Ernie's service station from Blair Line. And I kind of create that weathered grease strip in the center of the road. Here's the spackle on a cardboard, unpainted, the chipboard strip that I've nailed down. Kind of went back and forth there. Here's the spackle applied in one of the little spatulas, metal scraper spatula I've used. You can see it's kind of roughly applied with that tube there. I usually try to form a good enough slope while it's still a little wet. Here's this was a general store double when I first started it. Of course, I applied a lot of that spackle. This was the kind that applied pink, and then when it dried, it turned white. I'm waiting for it to dry here. And then again, I just take sanding paper to the whole thing and sand a smooth slope. Here's a profile of after sanding. You can see off to the right, there's kind of a little step and ridge. Not to worry, it's kind of how shoulders look in real life. So there's no need to sand it to a super, super, super fine edge. It's all going to be painted anyway. There's another photo of the sanded slope. And on some of the previous photos, I showed it painted. I use an interior matte latex paint for everything I paint on the modules. It's basically interior wall paint. and I just have my Home Depot, which is 10 minutes here, my local Home Depot, go ahead and mix up the paints for me, whether they're in little pint cans or the little plastic cups. And so I have a constant supply of that. Again, the desert one you'll see again. It's done the exact same way. It's just I've used kind of a sand, Arizona rock and minerals ballast or scenery instead of the white stuff. Let me go back a few here and show you where they were painted. I paint just the tops of my modules. I don't go and paint the whole thing underneath. I've never had an issue with warping. And of course, we live in a high humidity environment here in coastal Alabama and Pensacola, Florida. That's a half hour away. We've never had an issue with that. But again, it's the matte interior latex paint. This is a basic earth color. In fact, I used it polyscale earth was the color I had my Home Depot match. And now I have a can or two of it that I can just apply with a wide brush. And then for my asphalt roads that I used for the rural, I picked kind of a dark gray color. Asphalt, even when it's freshly poured, isn't pure black. And of course, asphalt actually lightens up within a week to a month to a dark gray and then a lighter gray. So I always kind of have some continuity in any of the rural Midwest modules. And again, the shoulder is painted the same color as what the earth would be before I do anything like that. But all told, people seem to like it. Now, Bruce Alcock's group, I remember they wanted to get involved with that, and they're actually doing more detailed Route 66. If you've ever seen some of their T-TRAK modules that are credited as Route 66 modules, they've done some of the actual Oklahoma Route 66. Well, is it Oklahoma? Bruce, is that Blue Whale Oklahoma or not, or Missouri?
Yeah. The Blue Whale is Oklahoma. The Round Barn is Oklahoma. The Verdigris River,
and I'm hoping that'll be at Grapevine at the NMRA. But
yes.
Those are actual Route 66. Again, I'm inspired by Route 66, so I can cheat a little and not have to model a prototype scene. So it gives me a little bit more artistic license. But again, I use chipboard. It was just a happy experiment. It was cheap for me. You can achieve the same thing with styrene or, gosh, there's all kinds of other products. But it's just simple as gluing it down with Elmer's glue, putting some kind of spackle shoulder, or you could use what is it, celluclay, the same way. Just sand it down. It does sand. The spackle sands a lot easier and dries a lot faster. And then once I'm covering it up with all that matte interior latex paint, it seals it basically, and I can apply ground cover, whatever it is, whether it's parking lot gravel or static grass or just ground turf to it easily enough. But I've made it through technically Arizona, New Mexico, and Arizona. I think I'm headed for the Mojave Desert now in my next Mother Road modules. I think they will be, once I learn how to make, Joshua trees in N-scale. I think that's my next my next attempt at something new to me. And then we're gonna go for some orange groves. But that's pretty much what I've done as far as the Mother Road. And again, any questions you have? We got about 6 minutes left, 4 minutes.
There is a 3D manufacturer in California that's making beautiful Joshua trees. They showed it on What's Neat This Week with Ken Patterson.
Oh, I'll have to look at that. Are the ends spiky like you want? I was thinking of using static grass to form those spiky ends. We'll see. I'll have to check that out. 3D.
Yeah, they were quite impressive. He did add a lot to them, and I don't think they were too much, but I'm doing the Pacific Northwest, so my interest wasn't that close.
Right, right. Well, I know there's a lot of manufacturers out there for saguaros, but of course I won't be going down that far south in Arizona. So, like I said, I'm going to be finishing up a few Arizona, I-40 Route 66 kind of, maybe some Ponderosa pines around the Flagstaff Williams area, and then again into California. So that's basically it. I hope people have enjoyed what I'm saying. I'm also on Facebook. If you go to Coastal Alabama T-TRAK on Facebook, you'll see that. And I've also posted the same thing at the both the NRail Facebook group, which we have now, the NRail Facebook group, and the National T-TRAK Layout Facebook group, which helps promote NRail aspect of N-scale model railroading with the T-TRAK. So there you have it.
Very nice presentation, Bruce. And I just got to say, I love the modules on the Mother Road that you've made. Probably some of the best T-TRAK modules I think I've ever seen, if I had to say.
Well, I appreciate that. My next thing, in my estimation, a module's never finished, even though you call it finished for a moment. I always try to go back even to the older ones and see if there's something else, something I do want to do, and I can't do it continuously from module to the adjacent module, but I've been accumulating a lot of easy line, which you know what that is. I'm going to start rigging all the power lines and the telephone lines on all of them, at least within the confines of the module parameter itself. So that'll give us a little extra detail and a little bit more visual interest when I use them as photography. I like to use mine as photography dioramas, as you can tell.
Right.
That's what I love about T-TRAK. You can put a single on your desk with some proper lighting and showcase that new boxcar you just acquired, or that new engine you just acquired when you want to do a review of it. So I
That's
appreciate
another thing I really enjoyed about the part of your presentation was seeing it outside. The Ken Patterson What's Neat This Week podcast has been a real big inspiration for me to get into T-TRAK. But again, thank you. Demko has a question. Does anyone know of active T-TRAK clubs near Birmingham, Alabama?
Nothing in Birmingham proper. There was a pioneering T-TRAK in Birmingham up until about 7 or 8 years ago. They actually used the original 25 millimeter standard that T-TRAK was born with, and they've not been active at all. However, we're only 3.5 hours away, and here in the southeast region, it is a heavy T-TRAK. John knows this. In addition, just to our little region here on the Gulf Coast, Pensacola is a very lots of T-TRAK there. Tallahassee, 3 hours to the east, is a bastion of T-TRAK, N-scale, and believe it or not, HO scale. Andrew Zimmerman, who is with the NMRA standards now, president, he runs that group, Big Bend. There is a group in Nashville, again, not too far from Birmingham, a couple hours away. And then Georgia currently has 3 groups, one in Atlanta, one in Middle Georgia, Warner Robins area, and South Georgia, Valdosta kind of area, Albany. It's Albany, but they call it Albany in Georgia, and Cordele, where one of the viewing platforms is. So, and then Jacksonville, Florida as well. So
there's a new T-TRAK club in Charleston, South Carolina.
A new one. Great. I know that the Low Country, one of their leaders, one of our great T-TRAKers, passed away last Thanksgiving. But there's a couple others there. So now one in Charleston as well. So we're kind of blessed. Chattanooga has one as well. So Chattanooga is only 2 hours from Birmingham. So, and Gadsden, that splits the difference between Chattanooga and Birmingham, an hour from each. They have a T-TRAK group as well. So right now we don't really, do we have a database, John, at NRail for.
There's a web page with a listing of clubs.
Okay. I'm glad we have that, not just over at the wiki page. So
Right.
All right, well,
NRail.org has clubs, a list of all the clubs that are T-TRAK, NTRaK, or just home layouts, whatever.
yeah, I'm hoping that if any NSIE guys are watching, don't neglect us down here in the South when you're thinking of future locations for your conference. I mean, for your conventions. So.
All right. Well, do we have any more questions for our presenters today?
Daniel, I'm going to go ahead and put up the poll. I hope everybody fills that out. Please do. You don't have to answer all the questions, but at least let us know how you think we're doing. We value your input very much.
Well, I tell you, for any of you guys that are going to Grapevine, you'll get a chance to see this Route 66 stuff in T-TRAK and in NTRaK. You'll find that the blue whale is in both forms, and so are several other modules right next to each other. Is in the Oklahoma City group and in the Tulsa group. Both groups do a lot of Route 66 modules, and you get to see the difference between the two sizes and how you do the same thing in each way.
And they'll even be connected.
Yes, they will be.
Bruce, if you're still here, I got to say once again, those modules you made, for the Mother Road, really are a great example of beautiful T-TRAK modules.
I appreciate my I'm unfortunate. I'm one of those rivet counters, that everybody loves to hate, because I like doing the fine scale. But my goal for T-TRAK has always been to show what can be done. I love T-TRAK as an entry level for in scale or model railroading in general, and I want to show that you can do as little or you can do as much as you want on even a single. So I still like to build singles just for that reason. Otherwise, we'd all do a big modular, a modular cohesive layout like you see at so many shows. But I think T-TRAK is all inclusive. So again, I appreciate your comments, and that's really my motivation for even doing T-TRAK, is to show that it's for everybody, all ages, all experience levels, and you can do as little or as much as you want, or as friendly. I let my wife do the whimsical modules. She does the whimsical ones. I like to do the more modeling, fine scale modeling.
Bruce, on your Kanoko gas station, I noticed that the roof on there, did you paint some of those individual tiles?
No way. that is all of Blair Lines. That's Dale Rush out of Missouri. Carthage is where he lives, right off of Route 66. He provides a what is it? It's an adhesive, and that is modeled after an actual Conoco, prototype style, one of those small ones with an add-on. And he does that. He does that for his hotel that I've used, and all of his others. His green feed and seed that I used on a module that Stuart Dennison now owns, and makes them. It's good. And for N scale, 1 foot rule, which is as close as kids want to get at shows. It does what it's supposed to do. But it's self-adhesive, contained in the kit.
The thing about modeling roads is that you need a lot of cars. I noticed you've got a real nice selection on your modules. Are most of these ready RTRs, or are you?
No, I'd say about half of them are variations of the, what is it, the Classic Metalworks? Is that?
Yeah.
I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah, they're the ready to run stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they still are. I've lowered them when I needed to, because some of them are prototypically too high, and I weather them. At the very least, I'll do a Tamiya panel line wash. If anybody's familiar with that, It's a product used for scale modeling, panel lines in aircraft or tanks or anything like that. I love it. We model railroaders need to discover more what the scale modelers have been using for 20 years. But at the very least, I'll do that. But there is another line of their resin castings of a guy named oh Lord, what was the priest in pre-revolutionary Russia, that Russian priest that got to be
Rasputin.
Rasputin, that's his name. Only it's not Rasputin with an I, it's Rasputin with a T-E-N. And he does amazing work from 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and now 70s, 80s, 90s vehicles. And he has a massive selection. And I found him over on the forum, the Rail Wire, if anybody's familiar with those guys. Great modelers there, but a lot of them are pretentious and stuffy. But if you can muddle through that, you know what I mean? If you can muddle through that, Rasputin, vehicles by Rasputin, you might even be able to do a Google search for him. He has an amazing selection, and they're very reasonable. But of course, they require painting, and all the ones I use have a lot of chrome, so painting is not as it's not as easy as I'd like. But where else are you going to get a 58 Cadillac? Or excuse me, 56 Cadillac, or some DeSotos, or Studebaker trucks and cars, and for my basically, I forgot to mention, kind of made mine a 50s era Mother Road series of modules. There's nothing really super modern in there, so I do try to populate them with those. And of course, I can't leave out Showcase Miniatures. They have an amazing selection of white metal kits, even modern kits that have won awards for Vehicles of the Year in N-Scale. But I like them also for the 50s era. And if you go on to, the NTRaK Facebook group page, you'll see my last little single populated with their kits. So that's the ones I like to use. Good seeing you, Razor. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Well, I'm trying to retire from as much stuff as I can.
But they keep pulling us back in.
Yeah. Well, the good news is we got Daniel here now, which takes a load off me, and he's doing a fantastic job.
He's done a fantastic job.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Glenn, I've seen your background image. Are you a fan of the Great Northern?
My greatest memory was riding the Big Sky Blue Empire Builder from Chicago all the way on, and I parked in the front row of the full-length dome.
Excellent.
That's very nice. I'm actually attempting to model the post 67 Empire Builder in N-Scale, but my wallet is not so fond of it, putting it that way. I wasn't around for that time, of course, but I have a lot of artifacts from that time period. I just obtained a bunch of timetables and I'd say a board per se, something replicating the old observation car panels that they had with the railroad logo.
Back in the day, everybody bought a bazillion of the Concours Big Sky Blue passenger cars, and now Lowell Smith is producing his version.
I actually just bought my first of his new run of the Big Sky Blue cars. It's one of the fluted passenger cars. I didn't see service on the Empire Builder, but it saw service on the International, the Badger, Western Star, and the Gopher. It hasn't come yet, but I hope to have it soon for the upcoming train shows for NTRaK.
The entire series of Lowell Smith's Big Sky Blue cars are beautiful, nicely detailed, and the paint's perfect. It's perfection.
Hey, Glenn, could you do a favor for me? Could you tell Allie hi for me? I haven't been able to contact him. We've been back and forth. We keep playing phone tag, and you were involved with the setup at.
He's still on.
Yeah, I'm
right
here,
now.
Bruce. What's up, man?
Well, I just wanted you to tell where. Hey, Allie. Hey, there you are. Hey, I didn't get to tell you and Glenn, but I finally got to see photos of the layout at the NMRA show the year before, and it's gorgeous. It was gorgeous. You guys did T-TRAK proud, and I was so thankful that y'all were able to do it. You know, because we obviously we weren't be able to do the national one. And I just wanted to say again how beautiful, how nice and neat, and it was just perfect looking layout. I hope it was well received. And
yeah, we did great. We had a nice variety. We had, I think, one or two gentlemen come and were not part of our club, had come from somewhere else, and it's been a couple of years. And they hooked in with us. Glenn helped me out. I think we took third place for overall layout, and I've never seen so many grown men so happy. It was really cool that we were acknowledged, especially being N scale. I know that. Well, how do I put this? NMRA's got a bad rap about being anti-N scale, which we now know after talking to Gordy that's completely wrong.
Right.
But at the time, we believed that maybe we were the stepchildren, and they proved us wrong. That they loved what the N scalers had to do. It was modular, and we had a blast. That was a lot of fun.
I am so glad to hear that all the way around, both with the NRA and of course Andy Zimmerman down here. You know, who's the standards guy now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're right. I guess all those perceptions were wrong.
Yeah, right. And I got to meet Andy at that, and I don't know if he's still on, but that was really cool meeting him and just I don't know, talking to someone that I only read about. So
I'm really glad. I was just really proud, and again, thank you and Glenn and all the other guys. And Bob, isn't Bob part of your group, Felker?
He's a mid scientist, and he did the
he did the arch
printed gateway arch to scale.
Yeah, well, I remember doing the ketchup bottle at first, and of course that ketchup bottle is in Collingsville, isn't it? Right? Isn't it right there across the river?
Yeah, Glenn. I've never actually seen it with my own eyes, but I know it's right in that area.
Yeah, the ketchup bottle. It's right across. It's right across the river from St. Louis in Collinsville, Illinois. I think it's along the CSX main line that runs through that area. I'm maybe wrong on that, but I believe it's CSX.
You guys haven't seen that. It's a single. It's a classic example of a single T-TRAK module with an iconic piece of Americana. It's, if you go to the National T-TRAK Layout website, the virtual layout that we held because of the pandemic, because we couldn't do the St. Louis Gateway 2020 show, is up there, and it'll be up there forever. I'll leave it up there forever. And you can, it's over 450 modules. And just scroll through there and you'll see that. And of course that was before his Gateway Arch. So I'm sure we'll see that one too. But again, I wanted to tell you guys, that was one of the reasons I was trying to call you, Allie. First of all, to touch base and make sure you're doing okay. But I was just so impressed with that layout you guys did. And I was thankful that y'all were able to represent T-TRAK, of course, at a national show. So
yeah, it was pretty great. It was pretty amazing. And it was all our MVNS members. I mean, I just happened to be the one that made phone calls and emails and got it put together. It was all their art. It was all there.
Yeehaw.
Yeah.
Yeehaw. That's all we can say. Yeehaw.
Yep.
This car I was holding up a few minutes ago is the Lowell Smith corrugated car. This is not Big Sky Blue. It's Milwaukee, Racine, and Troy, but it's the same car. And this will be in the train pulled by Cotton Brute in Grapevine.
No, do you know what prototype that railroad that one would be? Is that a Santa Fe car, Coach?
No, it's not Santa Fe. No, it doesn't say on the box. But if you look it up on his website, I'm sure it does.
The Milwaukee Racine and Troy, if I'm correct. That's the initials for Microtrains, correct?
No, Milwaukee, Racine, and Troy is Kalmbach.
Ah, all right.
Model railroader.
It was Kalmbach. Okay. Oh yeah, that's their HO layout, isn't it?
And now they've got some N scale stuff.
Wow.
That you can buy. This was the first. I think there's another one, but I don't remember what it is.
John, speaking of, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I am the owner of 3 of the model railroader T-TRAK modules. Cody sent them to me because he and I were the contacts for Kansas City, and those are the 3 that were left in the office. One of them is Pele Sorberg's single T-TRAK. Another one is I think Ken, who it was the corner that tested the concept of that Canadian project layout they did.
Right.
Mountains, and then and there was another corner that I think David Pop did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anyone that would like to take ownership or stewardship of those? He also sent me the basically the signage that they used at Kansas City, for their little section, so to show there. I have them, but I'm afraid that they won't get as much exposure as, they could if they were involved with someone else. 3 modules, 2 corners, standard corners, and a single. If anyone is interested in helping take stewardship of those, please contact me. Let me know, or contact one of the officers at NRail.
Bruce, let me just extend that. If somebody has a good lead on a museum where we could set, for example, we have the original T-TRAK layout that Lee Monaco Fitzgerald put together. That, along with the MR modules, along with things like the Cotton Brute and some other things, all should be in a museum in a exhibit. And it's a shame that they didn't make it into the NMRA exhibit. But if somebody has a lead on something or wants to work on that, by all means, let us know, please.
Bruce, I'm gonna send you some information this evening. There is a museum in Gulfport, Mississippi, believe it or not, just right next to Biloxi. 5 minutes from Biloxi, Mississippi. Everybody might know that. That is a model railroad museum. It had very small beginnings 10 years ago. They have expanded to a beautiful new facility that is massive, and it's interactive, but they also have, history of model railroading type things like that. I will contact them. They're starting to do an annual train show now, and I think we're going to start participating with that. But I'll contact them and see if they might be interested in something like that. Otherwise, it's a question of getting them, from Oklahoma to.
All right.
Copy me on that email as well, please, Bruce.
I'll be glad to.
It's Gordy. Maybe we should have a chat next week, because we've made an exhibit, but we're still making a museum.
Okay.
So might be worth having a conversation next week, and I'll fill you in on what's going on there. So there might be opportunities.
Great.
All right, everyone. Looks like
one more thing, if I may, Daniel, on Cotton Brute. I've had 4 people come up to me at train shows this year and hand me working Mini Tricks U30 CGs. So we have enough spare parts to keep Cotton Brute going for decades.
Excellent.
Okay.
It's gonna be real root right there. For everyone still here, I would like to thank all of our presenters today for being here with the ZoomTRAK meeting. I'm glad to be the host for the August ZoomTRAK meeting, and I'd like to extend my thank you to everyone who came here today, everyone who presented, and our loyal followers under NRail. And I hope everyone has a great day. We look forward to seeing you at Grapevine, Texas for the NRail train show and the 50th anniversary of NRail. So hopefully everyone has a great day, and thank you for signing on and watching the ZoomTRAK meeting.
Take care, dude.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.